Hi everyone and welcome to Verge. My name's Tisha Malott and I'm the current director. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land of which we meet, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Tonight we have a really exciting group of speakers, some younger people from major peak funding bodies, Australia Council, National Association for the Visual Arts, NAVA. We have Create New South Wales, and we also have a representative from the University of Sydney Union who will be speaking about the Bright Ideas program for Sydney University students. Let's just kick it off and let's get started. I'd like to introduce Mona Jindi, who is here from the University of Sydney Union.
Thank you. Hi everyone, welcome. So I work for the University of Sydney Union. Bright Ideas came about after I was working at Incubate, which you guys probably know. It's a startup and entrepreneurship program. It's kind of more of an accelerator thing, and it works with tech companies. While I was working there, I had to think about people that are involved in arts and projects and cultural things and how we don't actually have anything for them. And so I pitched the idea to the University of Sydney Union, my bosses, and they agreed that, we should start offering grants and funding, mentorship to arts and cultural based students. So here's a video of some of our projects that we've funded over the years. So with Bright Ideas, we want you to dream, dare, create. We want you to think big, and then you bring the project to us, and then we'll scale it down to something that's doable. But we don't want to put people in a box. We want them to come up with the best and greatest ideas they can think of, because we feel like that nurtures people's ideas and encourages them to follow their dreams. The USU Grants program, so we offer financial assistance, marketing support, mentoring and business advice, and access to industry contacts. And now we've actually got an office space. It's called the Bright Ideas Space. So you can print from there, do some work. There's a thinking hub there. And also I work upstairs and so does the assistant, and we can help you out with any ideas or things that you have questions with. We have 2 intakes per year. One's already gone past and the other one is starting, actually it's opening next week. Here are some of the past grants recipients that we've actually given funding to. So MASS was brought to us by 3 SCA students, and they had an idea that they wanted to do pop-up art exhibitions around Marrickville and Sydney City. And when they brought that to us, we thought, well, who's going to actually allow that? Like, it's kind of going to be hard. But they actually already had people in place, which is what we look at when you come to us asking for a grant, that you've already thought of the idea and you've done a little bit of research that there's a need for it and it's actually semi-doable. So they had some friends who owned a pizza place and other places like a Arts Deco place, and we just used that space, and we showed some of the artwork there. It was also able to be sold, and we always had a launch night where the USU funded food and wine and pretty much any entertainment. So we put that on the side, and then we had over 150 people attend each launch night. Another one was a carbon fashion show, and that was two students who actually, it's quite interesting, they're a couple, and they decided that they wanted to be able to wear the same clothes, so they went with the gender neutral fashion label, and they needed funding to do the actual fashion show. They had lots of big names there, and it was held at Central Park in the city, and we gave them $5,000 for food, the drinks, the venue, and makeup artists, hairstylists, and all that kind of thing. They're actually online now, and they're doing very well. The third example is Bluebird, and that was it was like a theatre show that was put on, and the guy thought that it went really well, so he wanted to start selling tickets for it and do another show. So he held it last year in Verge, and he actually ended up making money, and we gave him $2,000 just for all the stuff that he needs to get the project up off the ground. Just recently we held Organism, and that was in Courtyard. I don't know if you guys have been to Courtyard recently, but you'll see that most of the trees there are all lit up. They're actually lit up tonight, so if you've got nothing to do after this, head over to Courtyard. They're holding Little Italy as part of the International Festival, and Anthony actually came back, so his event was 2 weeks ago, and he's come back now to rejig the lights to match Little Italy, and I'm just going to play this video of his event. So that was Anthony's event. When Anthony originally came to us, he wanted to put sails and lights like from the rooftop all along Courtyard. And we did try to do that for him, but logistics and security and OH&S wouldn't allow it. So at the end, we brainstormed together and we decided that lights on trees would work. And it was very interactive, so you had to either touch the remote, put water into a container to get the lights to light up. And now he's going to go on to do bigger and better things, and he gets to put that in his CV. But also now we're going to keep the lights ongoing in Courtyard, and whenever there's an event, we're going to hire him to come back and reprogram it to suit whatever theme we're after for that event. So how to apply for Bright Ideas? You have to go to the USU website, usu.edu.au, and Bright Ideas. All the information is there, and it also gives you details about past recipients that have received the grant. All you need to do is fill in the form. The form takes literally 5 minutes. It's really easy. We try not to make it too long-winded for applicants. Then, if you're successful, we'll ring you up and we'll invite you in for an interview. The interview consists of 3 or 4 panel members. It'll be me, a marketing person, and maybe 2 board directors. And in that interview, it'll be a 5-minute pitch. You'll pitch your idea, and then we'll ask you a couple of questions. We usually take about a week or two to get back to you, and then once we've decided, we'll give you a ring and let you know you've been successful or unsuccessful. And if you're successful, within a week you'll have the grant to start your project. And obviously you can access the Bright Idea Space and marketing advice and more if you are successful in getting the grant. So the key dates for this round is they open next week, the 3rd of September. They close on the 4th of October. And we'll notify the finalists by the 8th of October. And we'll hold the interviews between the 8th and the 12th. And again, it's only like a 20-minute all-up thing for each person. And the results will be announced by the 14th of October. And you'll get 6 months from the 14th of October to use our office space, the Bright Idea Space, which is in the Manning building. And again, you can choose to do your work there, actually work on your project there. If you need a designated space apart from the Bright Ideas, so if you're doing theatre shows or something else, we can also help you book other spaces in the university to assist you with that. So tips to consider: have a clear vision. If you come to us and you don't know what you want, then we can't help you know what you want, and then we can't offer you the money because we don't know what you're after. So I think definitely a vision statement is good, and just something to prove that you've actually thought the idea through and that people actually want what you're going to offer. Enthusiasm, we like people to be excited and know, to have passion behind them. So, because it's a hard process, obviously, when you're doing a project, and we want to know that you can follow through to the end. There are some things on the website, and it's just, you need to align with the USU values. They're on our website, the Bright Ideas website, so when you're doing your application, just refer back to them when you're applying. And again, have you gone out to market? Who wants it? Where's the demand? How do you know that? And do you have time to commit to your project with studies, work and everything else? And just beware of typos and things on your application. And there's the contact us information if you want to know more. And this is our poster for now. If you have any questions, just come and see me after this, and I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.
What a great program put on by the University of Sydney Union. So now what we're going to do is we're going to move on to Create New South Wales and Lachlan Herd. I can just put this.
Yes.
Thanks, Lachlan.
No worries. Is that all right? Can everyone hear me all right? Yeah, cool. Okay, I'm Lachlan from Create New South Wales. I'm a sector investment officer in the arts investment team, and my main role is to administer the very currently sticky arts and cultural development program. These are the guidelines. We don't have any printed for 18-19 because it's a massive waste of printing paper, but they are available online if you go to our Create New South Wales homepage. So I was thinking about what would be the most useful thing for all of you, and I think the best part of our program for some people, like individual, are we mainly visual arts practitioners in the room, or is there people from different disciplines? Yeah? Yep, cool. So grants for individuals, which is our kind of like a professional development activity program, is probably the most relevant. It's stuff for individuals to apply for, like the fellowships and artist support quick response suites. The artist support quick response funding actually funded this exhibition we're sitting in right now. So any sort of project where you're going to kind of assist yourself to get to the next stage of your career is what you can apply for through that kind of program. It could be something as low-key as being a visual artist and hosting your first solo exhibition, or it could be something as high range as you are going to be curated into the Venice Biennale and you need to pay for flights to get there. So you can have any sort of range involved there. It's just about career development. So just go through the eligibility with that. You have to be a artist practicing in New South Wales. You have to be actually undertaking arts and cultural activity. That can be anything like design, visual arts, music, museum practice, and that's pretty much it as a broader thing for the professional development program. But it is important to look through each specific mini funding program, like the Creative Development Fellowships, Artist Support Quick Response, and the Young Creative Leaders, to look at the specific eligibility requirements for those rounds. Things like Creative Development Fellowships, you need to belong to a priority area from our SEDP program, which involves things like young people, which is people under 26, which I'm sadly not one of anymore, Aboriginal people, culturally diverse people, people living in Western Sydney, people living in regional New South Wales, and people with a disability. You can also apply for things outside of the kind of grants for individuals and professional development category. You can apply for regional arts touring, which it's more common for musicians to apply for independently, because musicians always go on kind of tours to like Wollongong and Albury and Wagga Wagga. But if you're an artist or a curator and you have an exhibition that you want to take out to those regional galleries and you need some support, you can apply for regional arts touring for that as well. You can also apply for arts and cultural projects funding if your project is much larger scale and there's not really much of a kind of individual professional development component to it. And that's for up to $60,000, but it is purely project based. Something that you might be interested in, if you're an artist-run initiative and you need to upgrade on equipment or are lucky enough to own your building and wish to renovate your building, you can apply for the Creative Capital funding. This is of up to $100,000 and we will fund 80% of the project, but not more than that. And it's only available to people in Sydney, Western Sydney, the Illawarra region and the Hunter region, so Wollongong and Newcastle, if that does make sense. And then we also have all the artist support projects duplicated, artist support and the projects round are duplicated in an Aboriginal artist specific round called Creative Koori, and that is specifically for Aboriginal practitioners. Same guidelines and same programs, but only open to Aboriginal artists and organisations. And just to go through those, artist support rounds and artist support quick response are up to $5,000. The Young Creative Leaders for people under 26 is up to $10,000. The Art Form Fellowships are $30,000 exactly, and the Creative Development Fellowships, of which you need to be part of a priority area to apply for, are up to $30,000. Projects, $60,000. Regional touring, I'm not actually sure off the top of my head. And Creative Capital is $100,000. So I was also asked to kind of get some information of how to best apply and write about your project. What do assessors look for in a great application? Specifically for Create New South Wales, follow the published assessment criteria. That is probably the most important thing. When you're applying for a grant, look at what the assessment criteria are before you start your application. Look at the objectives of the funding round and make sure that your project is meeting those objectives. That is the first paragraph, which is underneath the title of the funding program. It's important. Then read the eligibility, particularly the required support material. Ensure you meet the eligibility requirements and plan to have all your required support material, for example, your letters of reference, at the time of submission, because it's really rough if you've completed the whole application. You've got, as we all do, you leave yourself like 2 hours before submission before you actually hit submit. And when you go to do that, you see that there's a required support material, like a letter of support, and then you'll be frantically calling someone you've worked with like 3 years ago to get a letter of support. That's a bad place to be in, so make sure you don't do that. After you've looked at eligibility requirements, look at the assessment criteria, read the criteria closely, and check back with it while you're writing an application before you submit, just to make sure that you're kind of following each of those points. While you don't need to meet every point, in the criteria, if you're not addressing a lot of them, you might be in a bit of trouble. For example, in regards to budget, is your budget realistic? That's a criteria. Does your budget contain adequate artist fees? That's a criteria. NAVA has published artist fees online, which you can use to reference and put in your budget notes saying, I've sourced these artist fees from the National Association of Visual Arts. Code of practice? Yes, code of practice, cool. Because it is really important, because when the panel is assessing your application, they will have the criteria in front of them in the room, and they will have Create New South Wales staff with them, ensuring that they are assessing against those criteria and nothing else. Always have somebody read over your application before submitting. That's extremely important. You probably made a stupid typo somewhere. I do it all the time, and it's really embarrassing. So just make sure that's not happening, because even though it's not that bad, it kind of like is a bit jarring to somebody reading your application. And if it's not really making sense, you're not getting your ideas across, that's a bigger problem. Of course, with all these rounds, there is a limited pool of money available, and we often see unfunded excellence in our rounds because of this, which is extremely disappointing. And just be reminded that not being supported for funding by the panel is not the assessment panel dismissing your activity as not being worthy of arts and cultural activity in New South Wales. It is because there is not endless amounts of funding. Okay, third question, I was asked how to address assessment criteria and explain kind of decoding the weird terms like health. I know health is kind of a weird terminology to come across. But the best way to decode the guidelines is just to give us a call. If you have a question or something in the assessment criteria or the guidelines stands out as strange, the only way you're going to get past that is just to call somebody and have it clarified. Otherwise, you're kind of making up answers on your own. Our general phone line has gone down in the past, but I do have cards for all of you, so you can call me directly. I'm a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, and so any of those days, give me a call. I'll be at my desk, or I'll give you a call back. Probably the key weird section that people do get stressed out with, though, is the key performance indicators, called KPIs. Realistically, don't spend too much time on this in your application. And remember that you're not trying to impress anybody with this section. If you're only holding one exhibition, put your activities as one. It's better to be realistic than try to be impressive. If you start having, like you have one exhibition, but you think that looks like a little bit unimpressive, and you start adding in all your other activities, like all the emails that you've done, and your activities start going up to like 2,000, it's going to look very confusing to the assessment panel and could affect the way that your viability criteria is scored, because it looks like you haven't planned properly. But I can talk to you more about that if you need me to. Okay, and as requested, some do's and don'ts, is that all right? Yeah? Okay. So do engage with the ACDP priority areas where you can, but don't say you're engaging with them if you aren't doing so in a meaningful or direct way. So for example, saying your exhibition is open to people who are people with a disability, people from regional New South Wales, people who are culturally diverse, is not really direct engagement. Anybody can walk through the door, but it doesn't mean that your activity is directly supporting those people in New South Wales. A better example would be something like if you're holding an exhibition and you have a performance component and you are paying artists from somewhere like maybe Powerhouse Youth Theatre to be part of your project. That's a meaningful engagement with people from Western Sydney and young people. It's extremely important to note at this point that if you are engaging with Aboriginal communities, you need to have a letter of support from that specific community saying that yes, they also want to engage with you. Do pay fees to artists involved using published guidelines, like the NAVA guidelines, and do pay yourself an artist fee. Don't focus on the artistic nuances of your own practice in the application. It is a little bit boring. Do get straight to the point. What do you do? What do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? And for a professional development application, which I'm sure you'd probably be applying for, how is it going to benefit your career? And remember that sometimes assessors can be reading up to 130 applications at a time, and so if you're not getting straight to the point, they're going to switch off. Don't be afraid to use dot points. Do have someone read over your application before submitting. Do try and make it someone who has been successful in grants in the past. Don't be overly modest in your ask. Ask for what you need. Asking for less and not paying adequate artist fees will not increase your chances of success. Do at all times be succinct, realistic, and to the point. Do have support letters that are current and relate directly to the activity that you are proposing. And also, if you're a dancer or a performance artist or something in a moving image kind of capacity, do attach videos as support material, because otherwise the assessment panel can't really get an idea of what it actually looks like. And that's all.
Thanks, Lachlan. And I just want to really kind of point out one really good point that you did mention was to call the funding bodies. That's probably one of the best pieces of advice. If you have any questions, or if you just have an idea, I have called funding bodies every time I've submitted a grant and just kind of felt out the idea, kind of felt out if I was eligible for the grant, and also what things they will fund and what they won't fund. Yeah.
I also just forgot to say as well, I've got 10 making an application help guides that I can give to you, which are really helpful documents to make an application.
And I just have one question.
Yes.
The Create New South Wales grants, are they only open to New South Wales practitioners or working with New South Wales artists?
Yes, if you're an individual, you're only allowed to get funding if you're from New South Wales and if you've been here for the past 12 months, although that's difficult for us to know if you're not. If you're an organisation, and well, it's true. I'm not going to like hire the FBI on you. If you're an organisation, you can get funding if you're outside of New South Wales, but for New South Wales activity, for example, Next Wave Festival was successful in getting funding to pay for the New South Wales-based artists to come to Melbourne and be part of Next Wave.
Yeah. And also make sure that you pay yourself and you pay artist fees. I think that's also a really good point that you brought up.
Yeah, always pay yourself. Like if you want to keep your budget lower and you think that like putting all your time and effort into the activity for free is going to look better, it doesn't. We really want you to be paid. We want you to be working as a professional artist, and we want you to be getting income from that. And that's something that we're going to support you for.
And I also think that funding bodies really need to know the true cost of projects. It's really important when they go to the upper echelons of government or where they get their money as well, that they know how much actually an art project costs. Is that true? Or
It is, but the assessment panel already knows what the true cost of a project is, and they'll be able to see when you're not really putting your whole budget in there and your budget doesn't really make sense. Remember that we have, for projects, 4 criteria, which is, God, I'm not going to remember it off the top of my head. I think it's merit, budget, viability, and engagement. And those are all equally weighted. So no matter how great your artistic practice is, no matter how amazing it is, it's just as equally weighted as your budget and your viability. So those are really important things that I think particularly artists, like even myself, just kind of forget that that's not supposed to be the core focus of the activity. It's all equal.
I'm going to bring up now Claudia from NAVA. Claudia joins us from the great organization known as National Association for Visual Artists?
For the visual.
NAVA.
No.
Yeah. And now we'll be talking about their funding programs, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
So I work for NAVA. We represent artists, so we work as a membership deal. We do advocacy and professional development. Basically, we kind of advocate for artists' rights on a larger scale, and we can also help you with individual situations. If you feel like you're being treated wrong in any kind of way, you can call us up and we can help you out with that kind of stuff. We also have a document called the Code of Practice, which is, it sets the best practice standards for the visual arts sector. So in that, you can look at fees and wages, the way you should be working with commercial galleries and festivals, and basically best practice for almost everything you could find. If there's stuff that we've left out, feel free to contact us, because it's like an ongoing thing. It's constantly changing and being updated more than once a year. We also have a lot of professional development stuff for artists. So we've got guides and we do classes and we do a regional program where we travel all over the country and develop with artists, do classes there as well. This is one of our more recent campaigns, which was, these photos were shot here at UCID, but that was fair pay for artists, things like paying super when you're working with galleries and that kind of stuff, which a lot of people aren't aware of, so we were just kind of get some awareness for that. And recently we did this thing, which is like a national summit, basically to work on the code of practice pretty much, and to get people all in a room in Canberra during parliamentary sitting week, which was then totally outshone by what happened in Parliament the next week. So this is the stuff we have professional practice-wise. All of these, I thought maybe, can you read that? That's good? Yes? So this list of stuff, you can find resources about all of it on our website to download. There's videos and guides and also classes and stuff. I've got a couple of the guides with me, which I can give to you later, about writing a CV and filling out applications, and one really good one about budgets for your applications, which we also have downloadable in an Excel file that you can fill out and like practice your budget stuff for your grants. So we also have another good thing that we have that, also this stuff, unfortunately, is only available to members, so you'd have to be a member, but I'm just going to pitch it anyway. We advertise almost every kind of job opportunity we come across if we think it fits in best practice standards enough. We don't advertise things that rip people off and make people work for free and that kind of stuff, so that's in our jobs and opportunities section. These are all the grants we run throughout the year. The first two are the only ones that you'd probably be able to apply for because it's the end of the year now, but the rest of them will be starting up again next year. So Carstairs Prize, I'll talk a bit more about later. New South Wales Artist Grant goes 4 times a year, and there's up to 10 each round, and that's really good. 1,250 for individuals, 2,500 for groups. Friedman is for, we offer that to 4 emerging artists, and they get to travel and develop the practice overseas, and 1 curator, and that's $8,000 for the same kind of thing, traveling and developing your practice. And there's one for regional New South Wales artists. That one's from a trust, so that's not government money or NAVA money, that's someone who's, we're administering it for them. And the Visual Arts Fellowship, which just recently closed. Here are some people who've recently, well not recently, some are not recent, but past recipients. A lot of the people probably here have received NAVA grants. This is, just to give you an idea if you see any, this is this room, Marikit. Carstairs Prize, unfortunately it closes on Saturday at midnight, so I'm going to tell you about it even though you don't have heaps of time to apply, but maybe if you've got a project in mind already it might be easier to do. It's for socially engaged art projects, so it can't be, like I need to frame my works or that kind of thing. It needs to be for you going out and working with different communities and different people. And it's not specific who those people are, it's just any kind of community and social engagement really. And that's for $3,000, so that's due on Saturday night, midnight. There's all the information. There's the information I just said. And did I miss anything out? Yeah, so collaborative. So it can't also just be you showing your work to someone that you wouldn't usually talk to. You have to be actually working with those people, etc. This is the old poster for New South Wales Artist Grant because they haven't made the new one yet, but it's going to open. I think it's open now. Might not be open now, but it's closing in the 20th of October. So that's the one I mentioned before, $1,250 for individuals, $2,500 for groups. And this one's just for New South Wales-based artists. The other one, Carstairs, is for nationwide. And so a lot of people use this one for short-term things rather than gigantic projects. Or you can use it for both. So you can use it for funding a small part of your bigger project or a big part of your smaller project. And obviously for some people, $1,250 sounds like a big part of a big project, so it all depends on what your project is. But it's very flexible, and there's 10 of them per round, so the odds are pretty good. So this is the evaluation criteria of that specific one. It's pretty basic. We're not looking for anything special, rather, besides the fact that you're in New South Wales. I'm going to go into some tips about applying with us generally a bit later on, so I'll just skip that. But one of the requirements for most of our grants is that you consider yourself a professional artist. We don't really, check up on that so much as that all of these things tell us whether you are. So whether you're showing work and involved in things, obviously you don't have to do all of these because some people don't sell their work and that's not what their work's about. But selling work, you've been awarded a grant previously, you've done a public exhibition. It's been, you can read that. Can you read that? Is it small? I just feel weird reading it out to you when it's right there. And the last one is a member of a professional association on the basis of the status as a professional practitioner. That's something that you can find with us because we are a membership association. And we offer insurance to artists, and when we give you that insurance, we have to assess whether you are a professional artist practicing. So most of the people, pretty much, everyone who has insurance with us would be considered a professional artist because they are working. They're not just doing it as like a hobby or something, that's their job. Here's the support material you'd need for New South Wales Artist Grant particularly. We were thinking about tips on this in the office yesterday, and someone said, please don't include a picture of yourself in your artist CV, which you'd see surprisingly often, but you just don't need that. And I've got some guides on writing an artist CV if you need that. It's also all available online. 10 support images and letters of confirmation. For most of our grants, you don't need to have these, but it's good to have these. Some you do need to have them, so check with that. Because they can be really good for convincing the assessors that you're going to get it done. Tips and tricks. We are in the office I'm in the office every day, but we don't answer calls on Fridays. So if you're going to call us any day of the week except for Friday, or send us an email. Usually we all, have a chat about it and help you out. We've only got 5 people in the office, so we're just like, how do we help this person? And then everyone yells something out and then we do it. So that's really good for that, and very good for specific answers because we can just pick up the phone and talk you through pretty much your application. Another tip we had was plan as if your project is already successful. So talk about it like you're going to do it even if you don't get the funding, and that the funding's just going to assist you in that. So that sounds like you're serious about it, and you don't have that doubt in the back of your mind like we'd really, And the next one we had was write with passion. So you've essentially got to sell it to a bunch of people who might not have heard of you. So you really need to talk like it's the best thing that's going to happen ever. But also don't get carried away talking about your own practice and like what inspires you and all that kind of stuff, because we just need to get down to why the project will be good. So that's I know that's a mixed message, but if you need help with that one, we can talk to you about it as well. Another tip we had was to put your best images first in your support material, because if the way people look at most things, if you see something bad up front, you're going to carry that thought when you scroll through the rest of the images. And also making sure that your images are only relevant to the project you're applying for. So we don't need to see drawings that you did 3 years ago if you're making a film this year, so keep that kind of stuff out. And if you don't have enough images, that's fine, but don't fill it up with stuff that's not relevant. And as Lachlan was saying, making sure your budget is right is really important, because if that stuff doesn't add up, it doesn't look like you'll be able to pull it off. And people want to know that where their money's going is going to be worth it. And get someone to proofread, edit your application. We can't do that for you, obviously, because we'll be processing it all. But you definitely should get that, because even if you think you haven't missed anything, you might just sound a bit weird in some parts, and like really small things. Oh, I talked really fast. I thought that was going to go longer. That's the website. Does anyone have any questions?
I have a few questions.
Yes, go.
Well, a few. NAVA is not only great for grants, but you do have a membership program, and you also offer artist insurance, which I think maybe
should
some
talk
people,
more about.
Well, just as the insurance, just because I know running a gallery space, and some galleries don't have insurance for you when you're installing your own work, so it's really important that you come into these spaces with your own kind of insurances in place. And NAVA, is it new? Is it newer, or is it always been there, or it's just expanded?
I don't actually know how long it's been there, but I can talk about it. It costs $280 for a year of insurance, which is pretty, that's as cheap as we could make it. So we're basically the middleman with a broker. We hold a policy and all of our members are covered under it. You can apply for it any time of the year, which is a hard thing with some places who offer insurance only do it in certain times of the year. So this will happen on a weekly basis. We go through the applications and it'll be pretty much instant. It covers you mainly. What people look for in it is the public liability. So that's for if anything happens to the public on your account, you're covered. It doesn't cover the value of your works if they break, but we also have insurance for that, which is transit and exhibition insurance, which is calculated on a basis, individual basis kind of thing. And that's for when you're moving your work around and putting it on display. So, yes, we have that. And also the public liability includes a membership, so that means you have access to all of our guides and resources, and we've got your back if you need help. So that's a main thing people call us for, is like, this person fucked me over, can you help me out? Which we will try to.
And also, Lachlan, in your talk, you did mention the artist fees table.
Yeah.
So that's open to anybody.
Yeah.
You can find it online.
You don't have to be a member to access that. And we encourage everyone to access that. It's on the homepage, it says Code of Practice. You will need to log in, which is a weird thing, but it's free. You don't have to pay for it. And it outlines all of those things, workshops, talks, all of that kind of stuff. If you're ever asked to do something and it feels like you should be paid, or even if it doesn't, just check that maybe you should be paid. Yeah.
Great. And also, I really liked your point about the images, about putting your strong images first, because having done like proposal assessments myself, I do know that you really are caught by those first few images in a grant application or in a proposal as well. Great. Well, thank you so much. Claudia Roosen from NAVA. So I'm just going to escape out of here, and we have one more set of speakers now. We have from Australia Council for the Arts, we have Esther Rolfe and Marilyn Schneider. Do you want to come up? Great, I'll just hand it over to you both.
Okay, thank you so much for coming tonight. The Australia Council for the Arts is the major funding body in Australia. So we fund artists all around the country from different in different stages of their career, so emerging artists and established artists, and we also fund all different art forms as well. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in the presentation.
And we also do research and deliver reports and things like that. So go and have a look on our website and see what's available. So we have a range of grant programs, arts projects grants, career development grants, international residencies, fellowships, 4-year funding. We also manage some other grants, including for recording music. There's a travelling scholarship called the Martin Bequest, and a few other things. It's best to have a look on our website. There's quite a lot. They change, come up quite often. So have a look on our website, see if there's anything relevant to you, and call us. Today we're just going to talk about arts projects grants and career development grants, because I feel like they're probably the most relevant. So when you submit a grant application, you choose which peer assessment panel will be assessing your application. The way our assessment works is that we have a pool of peers, and then they'll be selected for each round, and they're people who are working in the field. So if you're applying to the visual arts panel, the people assessing it will be artists, gallery directors, curators, etc., and they're from all across Australia. If you have any questions about which panel you should be applying to it, please call us. That will be a common theme of our talk. We really do encourage you to call us or email us if you have any doubts, questions, if you just want to talk about a project, find out what you should be applying for, please call us. We also know about other grant and opportunities that other agencies are offering, so yeah, we've got lots of advice to give, so definitely give us a call.
So we have the upcoming grant round, which is the 2nd of October. We have 3 grant rounds a year, so 5th of February, June and October, and you can apply to those grant rounds up to 3 times a year as well. So if you're not successful in February, you can come in again to the next round. And yeah, we strongly encourage people to do that because it's a different panel every time, so a different group of assessors.
We don't offer quick response grants, so keep those dates in mind. Our grant rounds always fall February, June and October, and usually very close to the start of the month. And it's for projects that start 12 weeks after that. So for instance, our next round, which closes 2nd of October, is for projects starting after the 1st of January, and that's to allow time for our assessment process to take place. So eligibility requirements are quite simple. You need to be an Australian citizen or permanent resident. The project doesn't have to take place in Australia though. It can be something that's happening overseas, and you can also be living overseas. You don't need to be living in Australia. As Marilyn said, you can apply for 3 grants per calendar year, and that can happen in one round. So you might put in an application to the visual arts panel, and you might apply for something else to the music panel. It's up to you how you use those 3 applications. If you're doing something overseas, an international organisation can apply on your behalf. So that's something worth keeping in mind as well. Things we don't fund, we don't fund things retrospectively, so if it's already happened or if it falls before the date, so for instance if it happened before the 1st of January next year, we wouldn't fund that, and we don't fund anything that's not related to the arts or that doesn't benefit artists.
So arts projects for individuals and groups. Arts projects is for people who are creating new work, so it's an outward focused activity. So it's about showcasing your work or the creation of new work, and there might be some promotion and marketing activities in there, or perhaps you want to apply for the entire timeline of staging an exhibition. So that's sort of like the research and creative development that happens, and then you are going to make the work and then you stage the exhibition, and you might want to create a catalogue or some kind of publication or documentation or website and stuff, and you sort of consider the life of the exhibition after it takes place. So it's sort of, that could apply to any art form. It's sort of like the timeline or the life of the project, so it's thinking about it from start to finish.
And you can also, say, put in an application for the creation of a body of work, and then in a later round you might put in another application to exhibit that work. That's absolutely fine.
Yeah, so we can help you with the framing of your activities, because sometimes it is better to just apply for one element of the project if it's really big. And generally the timelines go for, up to 3 years.
And that's for $10,000 to $50,000. You can't apply for less than $10,000. So if your budget's less than $10,000, you might need to think about a way you can expand the project, documenting the work or something like that.
I can help you think of ideas to get money.
So the assessment criteria for that grant: viability, artistic merit, and then you have a choice for your third criterion, creation, audiences, international, or access and participation. There's information on our website on the Arts Projects for Individuals and Groups page about the assessment criteria. So I'd encourage you to read that, familiarise yourself with it before you do your application, and make sure you respond to it in your application, because that's what you're being marked against. And if you're not sure about the assessment criteria, if you're not sure which third criterion to choose, give us a call. We're happy to explain that to you, talk you through it. So the other grant that you might be interested in is the Career Development Grant for individuals and groups for $5,000 to $25,000, and that's for activities that help you develop a new skill or sort of expand your career in some way. So they're usually things like workshops, residencies, a mentorship, exhibiting work at a sort of showcase event, an internship, etc. So that's more of an inward focus. The outcomes you should be focusing on are skill development, your career, etc.
So like, how are you going to take your career to the next level, and just like really asking yourself, what do I need to do to get to this next stage? And people come through to us at any stage in their career for career development. So,
and it's important. I think sometimes people aren't sure which is a better fit for their project, arts projects or career development. Again, call us. We can help you decide. It can come down to how you frame it sometimes. For a career development grant, it might include an exhibition at the end, or it might include the creation of work, but the focus is more on the skills development. And likewise with the Arts Projects grant, that might include a mentorship, but the main focus of the project is the work that you're producing. So again, it sort of just comes down to how you frame it sometimes, but if in doubt, give us a call. The assessment criteria, first criteria is the same, viability, which we'll talk a little bit about in our grant tips section. Second one, potential of the artist or arts worker. So this is open to curators, etc. as well, so you don't have to be creating work. And the impact on your career. So these are some early career artists and arts workers that we've funded in the past. So these are all people under 30.
So we funded Reese Cooper. He's a designer, so he designs furniture, and he had this really great showcase opportunity for an art fair in Melbourne. So we just funded the process of him developing the work and producing a catalogue, and he also had to pay for the stand at the fair. So I think that was like $5,000, and then $2,000 went on the publication. He also had to hire a professional photographer and buy the materials to create the work, and also pay for accommodation in Melbourne and the shipping and freight and stuff. So when you really look at a project and ask yourself, how much is it going to cost me to make this thing happen? It does add up, and then of course all the fees come into it as well, like paying yourself and paying other artists as well. So Amelia Dent, she went overseas to Japan. She went to this really small village. It's sort of like the home of porcelain. It's like where porcelain was founded basically, and she worked with all these local artisans in the factories and visited all these studios, and she got to hang out with other artists from overseas, and she learnt from them as well about skills in ceramic and porcelain work, and she slip casting and produced, I think, 120 works in like 2 months, which is pretty amazing. But she found all these moulds at the back of the factory. It was like this mould graveyard where they'd thrown away all of the moulds that they couldn't use anymore because they were defective or something wrong with them, so they couldn't use them to make ceramics. So she decided to give life to these old moulds and poured porcelain into them to create these objects, and then she exhibited them later in Sydney. And a lot of things came out of it. She got to do some more collaborations with other artists in Sydney, and after her show a lot of people approached her for sort of like media stuff, and then also a little bit of showcase opportunities like exhibiting in other galleries and stuff. So it was a really good opportunity for her. Nicholas Tammins, he is a curator from Melbourne, and he undertook a mentorship with Tara McDonald. So she's a lecturer and also a independent curator, and she created this journal. She's one of the editors for The Exhibitionist. It's like a journal specifically for curators. So he went over to Georgia with her and assisted with developing a triennale that they both curated together. So there were 15 artists in the show, and he was responsible for selecting the artists and corresponding with them, and then they all created site-specific works. And some of the challenges that he faced was being overseas in a foreign country that you don't know, and you've got to make an exhibition happen, and he couldn't find gaffer tape. Like, there were just like really simple materials that you can get here quite easily, and then you go away and suddenly these things don't exist, and you have to come up with creative solutions on how you're going to materialise your ideas. So he did this project with Tara, and then they collaborated on some of his independent curatorial projects after that, and then that really helped to build up his experience and CV, and also his network. So it was mostly a professional networking opportunity where he was able to meet artists and other arts workers, which really helped his career. Keeping in mind these are quite young people, like 26, 27, so they're really great opportunities, but also realistic and timely, like suited to their career and the stage that they're at as well.
I think there's a common myth that Australia Council only funds established artists or well-known artists, but we also fund emerging artists, early career artists. It doesn't matter sort of who you are. What you really need is a competitive application. So what makes a good application? First of all, your project. Ask yourself, why this, why now, and convey that in your application. So why is this opportunity important to your career at this time? You need to be able to explain the timeliness of your project. So why do you need to do it this year instead of next year? Because if it comes down to your application and someone else's, and one of the projects really obviously needs to happen now versus one that could happen next year or the year after, it's more likely they're going to fund the one that is the most timely. So you need to be arguing why it's important that you do it now. What will this opportunity bring to your career? Explain the context of your project. So how does it fit with what you have done in the past, what you'd like to do in the future? How does it fit with current trends in the art world? Introduce yourself. The peers that will be assessing your application are from all across Australia. They're from very different backgrounds. They might not know you, they might not know your work, so you need to introduce yourself. You also need to introduce anyone else you're working with on the project, and you need to explain why it's important that you work with those people. Clearly articulate your artistic vision and rationale. So one of the selection criteria is artistic merit. So you need to be able to explain the artistic rationale behind your project, show that you have clear and realistic objectives, explain exactly what you'll be doing. So sometimes the peers read an application and they get to the end of it and they sort of think, I'm not actually sure what this person's doing, like what's this project look like? So don't leave them guessing, like make sure they know exactly what the steps of the project are. Highlight the outcomes of the project, so that can be something tangible like an exhibition or a publication, or it might be something less tangible such as a new skill that you want to develop, building a network for yourself, etc. And that builds on to articulating the impact of your project. So that could be an impact for yourself and your career, or it could be an impact for the art world, for audiences, or for a wider community. But you need to be able to speak about what the impact of your project is and be ambitious. So you need, as long as you can show that you can deliver the project, you can be as ambitious as you want. Talk about viability?
Yep. So viability comes down to how well you've planned your project. So the peer assessors are going to look at how realistic your budget is and how viable it is. So they'll look at the co-funding or any in-kind support and also your own contribution. So if you're able to contribute some savings of your own money to the project, that's really great. I think
a lot of the things have been covered. So again, pay yourself, pay everyone involved in the project. If you're working with a community, include a letter of support to show that you have, that they want the project, that they want to work with you. That's especially important if you're working with an Indigenous community. The Australia Council has protocols for working with Indigenous communities or with Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander arts and culture. So you need to show that you're aware of those protocols, that you're adhering to them. If you have any questions around that, please call us. We also have protocols for working with children. So if your project involves working with anyone under 16 or 18, you need to be aware of those protocols. Wherever possible, you need to confirm your activities and partnerships for your project. That's going to count towards the viability. Ask for what you need. Your application won't be more competitive if you ask for a smaller amount. I think that's already been covered. Your budget needs to be realistic. It's your chance to show how well you've planned the project and to show that you have the capacity to deliver this project. So that's all important. The application, make sure you're applying for the right grant. If you're not sure, call us. Make sure you choose the best panel. Speak in your own voice. Avoid speaking in third person. Use clear, simple language. This isn't an essay. You're not sort of writing something academic. Make it easy to read. Don't use a lot of jargon. Give as much detail as you can. You don't want the peers to have any questions or doubts because this is your one application to speak to them. If they have any questions, they can't email you and ask. Provide your best artistic support material. If the selectors aren't familiar with you or your work, the support material's your only chance to show them what you're capable of producing. If you can provide letters of support, that's your opportunity to, have someone else supporting your application, talking about why they're excited about it, why they think you're the right person for this project. That can be really compelling. Ask someone to proofread your application, and remember that it's competitive. Our success rates are around 15 to 17%, which is low, but if you're not successful at first, don't give up. A lot of people don't get a grant the first time that they apply, but the second or third time they might. assessment panel changes every time. So you could apply with the exact same project again, and it might be successful because you have a group of people who respond to it more favourably than the previous group. And contact a grants officer at any stage in your application.
Yeah, I just wanted to add with the letters of support, I often advise people to ask, industry professionals or people in their field who are practicing artists or writers, curators, to write their letter maybe a month before. Just give the person plenty of time so that they don't have to rush it, and you might have to chase them a little bit, and if you're not getting, if it's getting really close to the deadline, you can also draft the letter and then ask them to sign it, so people do that as well. But that's usually something that, people forget about, and then they've done the whole application and they have forgotten to ask for a letter. So
you don't have to provide letters of support, but they can be really compelling.
So they want to be someone who can speak persuasively about your practice, and also confirm that you are capable of pulling the project off.
You don't need to provide letters of confirmation. So for instance, if you're going to do a residency, you don't need to provide a letter that just says like, yes, so-and-so is doing this residency. You should only be providing letters that are of support. So similar to something you'd put with a job application, someone speaking highly of you. You can provide up to 5, but don't feel like you need to provide 5. It's better to have 2 really strong ones rather than like 2 strong ones and 3 kind of lukewarm ones. I think, does anyone have any questions?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Because no one's really touched it yet with the budgets. Can you maybe talk about some examples of in-kind support that you might put in your budget?
So in our budget, you put your expenses, and then there's also a section where you put your income. So that might be a grant you're getting, or if you're putting some of your own money towards the project. You also can list in-kind support, which is anything you're getting for free or a discounted rate. So if someone is providing you with a service, maybe they're installing your exhibition for you and they're not charging you, that's in-kind support. So the way you would enter that is you'd sort of select something like artist wages, and you'd put the amount that you would have had to pay them. But basically it sort of cancels itself out. But what it shows the assessors is that there's other support for your project, that people are on board. So if you're not able to get another grant, or if you can't put your own money towards the project, you can at least show that there is support for the project coming from other people.
So they want to see the overall value of the project. So something might be worth $80,000, but they're getting it for $20,000 if you only ask for $20,000. But it can sort of persuade the panel by showing them that your project is valuable.